what Senator Kennedy is saying, because remember this, these senators and folks, they're down there. They literally are down there. And their job is to litigate, meet, vote, basically to be informed of all of these different changes that are going on within the government and spending that's going on in the government. So in my opinion, USAID being able to do whatever it was doing that may or may not have been good was completely missed by the oversight of the same Congress and Senate that's supposed to be taking care of it. So you can say what you want about Elon Musk, but if this has been going on for 20-something years, there's been a bunch of presidents and a bunch of people who've basically turned a blind eye to it. So let's just hear what Senator Kennedy has to say. I'm going to speed him up a little bit because I don't want to take up too much of the time, but it's very important that we listen to what he's saying.
Senate office, Mr. James Shea. He is one of my...
Hold on, let me move it up a little bit.
Met a lot of interesting people. Before I got here, everybody told me about the Washington bubble. And I said, how serious could they be? Well, it's true. There is a Washington bubble. This place is different. It's in its own way, sometimes disappointing, sometimes refreshing. It is deeply weird. For one thing, common sense is illegal in Washington. It's illegal. For another thing, I've discovered that this is a town of very frustrated ex-class presidents. And there's a Washington way of doing things. And when things aren't done that way, when somebody challenges the status quo, many, not all, but many of these frustrated ex-class presidents in Washington, on the Hill and otherwise, they get excited, not in a good way. They can't get their mind around doing anything other than the Washington way. Some of them, particularly in the media, they go almost catatonic, or the exact opposite. They foam at the mouth, and they really get upset. They can make a Valium nervous. It's like the world.
Make a Valium nervous.
The way we've always done them, and the world's going to spin off its axis. I want to try to put in perspective what many of my Democratic friends have been talking about today. They're very, very, very upset at President Trump. And they're very, very, very upset at Elon Musk. President Trump ran for president on a number of issues. One of the issues he ran on, he said it almost every day. He said, if you elect me president, I'm going to go through the entire budget and review all the spending.
He did say that.
If I heard him say that once, I heard him say it 1,000 times.
That is true.
And that's what he's been doing. He went out and appointed, through an executive order, Elon Musk, who some people like him, some don't, but he's not a dummy. He's a very successful business person. He's got a top secret security clearance. President Trump issued an executive order, and he turned to Mr. Musk, and he said, Mr. Musk, I want you to do for me what I said I was going to do in the election. I want you to go through all the spending, line by line. Now, let me ask you something, Mr. President. How are you going to review the spending without reviewing the spending? How are you going to audit the spending by an agency without auditing the agency? That's what I mean when I say common sense is illegal in Washington, D.C. That's what Mr. Musk is doing. He's put together a crackerjack team, and they're going through everybody's spending line by line, item by item. And my Democratic colleagues are very, very, very upset. And they've been very eloquent. They've talked about the process, and President Trump's executive order supposedly violates the Constitution. And they've accused Mr. Musk of having conflicts of interest. And so I've heard people say he's sitting over there with a notepad, copying down everybody's Social Security number, and he's going to go use it to make money.
All BS. We know that.
I mean, people in this town, not just my Democratic colleagues, they're really upset. They've never said anybody question their spending. But that's what Mr. Musk is doing. But you know what?
Hold on a second. Did you hear that? You hear what he said? They've never had anybody question their spending. That's what he just said. All right, I'll let him continue, but just listen. This man is talking for a reason. Okay? That's why I started with one group. I'm bringing the other group, and we can have an objective conversation because we're looking at both sides. I'm not just giving you one side. I'm giving you information so we can have a conversation and communicate. But when I show you what I found, it's going to mess with you a little bit. I'm just going to be honest. So stay tuned. This is a
prison riot. Oh my God, look at what Musk is doing. He's looking at the spending. And I've listened to people talk about the process and debate whether it's constitutional and discuss how many lawyers can dance on the head of a pin. But you know what? I haven't heard one single person who's upset with President Trump or Mr. Musk talk about what he's found.
Uh-oh.
They don't want to talk about the spending porn, the waste of taxpayer money that he's found. I mean, that's the point of all this. I tell you who is interested. The American people. The people in America who get up every day and go to work and obey the law and pay their taxes and try to educate their kids and try to do the right thing by their kids and try to save a little money for retirement and have had to live through 20% inflation under President Biden. They understand what Musk is doing. They understand spending porn and wasting taxpayer money. Now, Mr. Musk started with the USAID. That handles a lot of foreign aid for America.
That's why we're going to get into it.
In our country, when you're homeless, we'll house you. When you're hungry, we'll feed you. In our country, when you're too poor to be sick, we'll pay for your doctor. And we send a lot of money overseas to help our world's neighbors. And the USAID is in charge, in large part, of that. But I'll tell you what Mr. Musk discovered. I find it fascinating. He discovered that the American taxpayers are giving money to Afghanistan. He found that we are giving money to Yemen. He found that we are giving money to Syria. I didn't know that. Some of our foreign aid is going to Yemen, Afghanistan, Syria. He found that the USAID has 10,000 people, employees. And every year they give away $40 billion.
40
Mr. Musk also found, and I'm not saying that all of this money is wasteful.
Right, that's the good point. Sure, not all of it is waste, but there's definitely some fat involved.
The department to separate the good from the bad.
And we're going to get into that.
But this is the kind of stuff Mr. Musk found. He found that the USAID gave money to support electric vehicles in Vietnam. Our money, taxpayer money. He found that USAID gave money to a transgender clinic in India. I didn't know that. I bet you the American people didn't know that.
Well, how he didn't know that? He's down there.
The USAID gave $1.5 million to a Serbian LGBTQ group called Grupa Izladaji. I probably mispronounced that. My apologies. Anyway, they got $1.5 million to, quote, advance diversity, equity, inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. What else did Mr. Musk found that my colleagues don't want to talk about?
Because they ain't talking about it. I will give him that. He's right about that.
He reviewed a study and then went and checked it. The study was done by the Middle East Forum. They found that USAID spent $164 million to support radical organizations around the world. We're not talking Cub Scout troops here. We're talking about radical organizations around the world. They gave $122 million of that to groups aligned with foreign terrorist organizations. Our taxpayer money.
And this is,
according to this report,
what we're going to get into.
The USAID has given millions of dollars to, quote, organizations in Gaza controlled by Hamas. Why aren't my colleagues talking about that? Recipients of the money, they found, have, quote, called for their lands to be cleansed from the impurity of Jews. That's what we're giving foreign aid to.
Uh-oh.
What else? I'm not going to spend my whole time talking about this, but nobody else is talking about it. They're just talking about the process. And Mr. Musk, and he's a mean guy, and he shouldn't be looking at our spending. Well, he is. And I kind of find what he's found out interesting. He found that we gave $2 million, USAID did, for sex changes in Guatemala. He found that we gave $20 million to produce a new Sesame Street show in Iraq. He found that we gave $4.5 million of taxpayer money to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan.
It was a censorship project, by the way.
$10 million, USAID did, of meals to an al-Qaeda-linked terrorist group called the Nusra Front. Mr. Musk found that we gave $7.9 million of taxpayer money to a project that would teach Sri Lankan journalists to avoid binary gendered language. The USAID took $8 million and gave it to a bunch of journalists in Sri Lanka to teach them how to avoid binary gendered language. I don't know what the hell binary gendered language is. I think I do. You think most taxpayers would support that? Why aren't we talking about that? The USAID gave $1.5 million to promote LGBT advocacy in Jamaica. They gave $1.5 million to rebuild the Cuban media ecosystem.
We can't even fly to
They gave
Cuba.
$1.5
What are they
million
doing in
for,
Cuba?
quote, art for inclusion of people with disabilities in Belarus. Another $3.9 million for LGBT causes in Macedonia. $8.3 million for equity and inclusion education in Nepal. I could go all night. And many of my colleagues are upset. They're really mad at Mr. Musk. Hell, I think we ought to give him a medal. All he's doing is what President Trump said he was going to do. President Trump said he's going to audit the spending. So Trump goes and hires Musk, again with a top secret security clearance. Nobody can quibble.
Heard that? For anybody that had a question, he already had a top secret government security clearance before this Doge thing was even a thought. Keep that in mind. So when Trump pulled him in, he already knew that he had a clearance to do certain things. And he could just give him a job like a person that works at the federal government. So he could appoint him. It's not against the law to appoint a person to a position in government who already has a top secret clearance. Because if he didn't have one, he would have to go through a background check and get one, and then he would still be able to be a consultant or special, whatever the hell they called it, to the president. So I'm going to just need everybody stop focusing on whether or not he has the clearance to be in that position. He does. Now, whether or not they want him to expose certain things and what's privacy versus what isn't, hey, anybody that's worked in IT knows you can lock a system down so that people can't see certain things. You base it on certain compliance regulations and all that kind of stuff, conflicts of interest and all types of things. And these are business people. You think they didn't go through looking at the curves in that before they even started this? This plan and plot has been in place. You keep saying Project 2025. Project 2025 didn't come out in 2025. So this plan was already laid, guys. Elon Musk was already involved. Probably 3 years ago, after he took Trump's page down off of X or whatever he did at that point. And then that's probably when things started. They probably became friends after that. And they started this whole plan of how they look, man, there's a lot of stuff going on that we need to get rid of so we can get our money. And that's true. These guys are in the business of making money. So for me to think that there's not some motive for them to make money in things that they're doing, I'd be foolish to say that. What I am saying is, like Senator Kennedy just said, is why isn't anybody talking about this spending? Like, why isn't anybody mentioning what this was going to or questioning that on the other side of the aisle? And the reason for that is, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to give Kennedy about 2 more minutes here.
With his intelligence.
And let him talk about the Doge thing.
He's as smart as Einstein's cousin. He's a very successful businessman. Some say he's the richest guy in the world. And he's doing the auditing. And, man, he's finding a lot of stuff. I call it spending porn. Now, I'm not saying everything that USAID does is wasted. But I'm saying a lot of it is. A hell of a lot of it is.
Hell of a lot of it is.
And we ought to be on the floor of this United States Senate thanking Mr. Musk. And we ought to be asking him to go through every agency.
He is.
Look at everybody's budget.
He's trying.
Everybody's budget. That's what the American people want. They don't want to talk about process. They don't want to continue with the Washington way. They want to save some money.
True.
Now, let me tell you what's really going on here, too, Mr. President. For 4 years under President Biden, and for, 8 years under President Obama, and I respect both of them. I don't hate anybody. I don't. When I say my prayers at night, one of the things I ask God, God, don't let me hate, because it's hard in Washington. Don't let me hate. I have all the respect in the world for President Biden and President Obama. Tough job.
Make sure y'all get the likes up, guys. Keep the likes up.
And President set the tone. They control the questions that are asked. And here's the question that President Obama and President Biden asked for 8 years. For 12 years. I heard it every single day. Who needs to pay more in taxes? Is it you? Is it you? Who needs to pay more in taxes? We need more money. Who needs to pony up more? That was the issue. But that's not the issue today. We have a new president. You know what the issue is today? What the hell happened to all the money? What the hell happened to all the money? And that's what
That's a
Mr.
good
Musk is talking
question.
about.
What the hell happened to all the money? I'm just saying.
I'm just shocked that my colleagues have decided that this is a hill they're going to die on. How can you look the American people in the eye and support this kind of waste? Support this kind of spending porn? I mean, the election to me made at least one thing clear, that the American people are sick and tired of people in Washington denying reality. The last administration tried to convince us that we were living in a crime-free world where inflation was temporary and the border was secure. And the American people didn't buy it. You know why? Because it wasn't true. And the administration, our last administration, tried to argue that Bidenomics was making our lives better. But the American people knew differently. They understood Bidenomics to mean I get to spend more to live worse. And they voted. Now, I mean, the American people were poorer under the last administration, but they didn't become stupid. They could see that the government was creating a problem, not trying to fix it. And they noticed the national debt, too. Put up that first chart for me.
Uh-oh. I'm pulling up the charts.
You know what our national debt is, Mr. President? $36 trillion. Not million, not billion. $36 trillion. It takes my breath away. Highest it's ever been, over 100% of our gross domestic product. Our debt's growing faster than our economy.
Well, I'm gonna stop him right there because he gets into some really interesting numbers regarding the national debt. Now, we all know the national debt is a problem, right? But one of the things that they seem to be finding out is the debt is also being created by spending, and they're trying to figure out why they're spending all of this money on basically stuff that it seems like we don't really need. And we definitely about to get into that. Let me see if this is the clip. I think this is it. Hold on. Yeah, this is it.